Maga Mac guys. That would be John McMullen and Jody McDonald. And I know my partner is quasi glad to be here with me, but he's also a little bummed to not be in Indianapolis where the NFL meat market, come on, let's be honest, that's exactly what it is. It's a meat market between collegiate football players who want to continue their playing career and the 32 National Football League teams. A little bummed that you're not out in Indy, huh, McMullen?
Yeah, a little bit bummed for reasons I cannot speak of on the air, but I'm not the only one, evidently, because I wake up this morning. Well, I knew Sean McVay wasn't going, and people say, "Well, the Rams don't have any picks anyway." But that harkens back to 2020, what year? Yeah, 2020, the last year. We had the combine. He didn't go either. And now Kyle Shanahan's not going. Robert Saleh's not going. Um, these are head coaches in the National Football League, and they're not going to the combine, which tells you the combine ain't what it used to be, at least to some teams and some organizations.
No, I would disagree with those teams and disagree with what you kind of hedged at with there. Oh, you don't have any top picks. They traded all their picks. They were all in this year. Oh, then that means those fourth-round picks, fifth-round picks, sixth-round picks are even that much more important to a team like the Rams. You can't afford to miss on those. If you're giving up your ones, your twos, your threes to add veterans and multiple picks for one player, you still need to fill out a roster. And the Rams, the last couple of years, have been pretty damn good at late day 2, all day 3 picks. They've been able to pick guys, not star players, but guys who step in and play for them and help on both offense and defense. So give credit to Snead, their general manager, and their entire scouting staff. If John McVay's the smartest guy to enter the room in years.
Be careful, Jody, because you don't want to be banned from the NFL if you want to say anything else. But I will say, I remember Sean talking about it a couple of years ago, and he just said, look, I think our time is better spent in the facility. I think we can get more accomplished in the facility. It wasn't just like he's lazy and not going. He's one of those guys. Now, right or wrong, and you bring up the Rams have been very good at the bottom of the draft. And, generally that's where this would help you, because a lot of the top guys aren't going to work out because they don't have to work out, and they can wait for their pro days and be comfortable because they have their cachet. Evan Neal, potential number 1 overall pick. He's waiting for Alabama's pro day, and he can do that because it's not like people are going to overlook him, and he can do it in a more comfortable environment. But if you're a 4th or 5th or 6th round pick, you pretty much got to show your wares. And we're going to have Paul Domowitch on this morning. He did a great piece for the 33rd team about, has the combine outlived its usefulness, basically. And I think that's apropos considering how we start the show. But, one of the things he mentioned, and Daniel Jeremiah mentioned, well, it's still good to see those middle round picks and to see them on the same field, to see them in the same environment, to see them up against each other. Teams like the Rams are thinking a little bit differently. I don't know who's right. I do know when they started this thing, it was about the medical evaluations. And to me, the other stuff is like more, this whole industry has sort of been created about the NFL draft. And hey, I like it. It's great. It's created jobs. There's people all over the place who cover the draft. But I think it's more important for them than the teams. I really do, except for the medicals, which is the most important part. But obviously, if you're a head coach, you don't have anything to do with the medicals. I mean, that's your medical staff and your medical evaluation and people of that nature, and independent doctors as well. So I see both sides of the fence, but clearly the NFL has turned this into a television vehicle. And as they've continued to do that, it has become less and less meaningful for the teams themselves.
All right, let me ask you a question about the team that you and I cover on a daily basis, and that would be your Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to set the over-under at 20. How many times Nick Sirianni said this year in a sentence, loves ball?
He loves
20?
20. That's
Over
got to be.
or under? How many times did Nick Sirianni say in any passing media session for any reason, either specifically asked for it or he just kind of meandered there to utter the phrase loves ball?
Well, certainly it's way over.
Okay.
It kind of, because he'll say it behind the scenes as well. So I've heard it way over 20 times.
I'm only talking about for mass consumption.
Yeah.
During media sessions.
It's still got to be over.
Still more than 20, right?
Still got to be over.
All right. And if that's the case, your head coach is so motivated to use the phrase loves ball, why the hell wouldn't the combine be important? It's a chance for you to showcase your skills,
again,
to be able to go out there and compete against other guys at the same position. Oh, I'd want guys who want to be there at the combine, who want to compete, who want to show off. That if I'm the Eagles and Nick Sirianni is a guy who's going to have to coach these guys up, and he loves guys who love ball, give me the guys who love ball by showing it at the combine.
Well, I will say this, and I'm with you, so I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'd go to the combine. I'd recommend everybody shows up at the combine. And by the way, if you belong at the top of the draft, you're gonna be great at the combine. So I don't, I'm with you in theory. But I am going to play devil's advocate. And from a coaching perspective, and I go to Sean McVay again, obviously, because he's the leader, as he is with most things in this league these days. He would argue that, they're grinding film and doing their work in the facility, and there's less time at the Prime Steakhouse and St. Elmo's Steakhouse, and there's less partying, and they're doing more work, and they're getting more accomplished. That's what he said back in 2020 when he did this for the first time. And he felt that he believed his personnel department could get more done at home than they could do there. Now, again, you could debate it, but I give them. He certainly, I will say this, he's certainly not sloughing off. He's certainly not going to the golf course at 4:00 like Steve Spurrier back in the day. He's one of those new age coaches that wears their work ethic like a badge of honor, which I think is, to be honest, I think it's a little bit silly. I don't think you have to work 20 hours a day. I think that leads to burnout. But nonetheless, he's not a guy who's like leaving the office. So again, I see both sides of the fence. I think it's more of a knock at what the league has done to the combine. Like if it were the old combine, I think everybody would show up. I think a certain amount of teams, and they're growing each year. And Damo talked to a lot of agents about this, talked to Joe Banner about this, talked to Jeremiah, as I said. So we'll get him to explain it as well. A lot of people look at this and say, what's going on here? Is this really what it was supposed to be? And my answer to that would be, well, probably not what it was originally supposed to be. It's become more of a television vehicle.
Well, since McVay seems to be the guy that we're basing a lot of judgment on, which I know he's good. I know he's colorful. I know Amazon tried to spirit him away, and he could have made himself a hell of a lot of money, and he did stay committed. So I'll give him that much as far as the coaching aspect goes. He didn't create football. He didn't invent football. I'm not going to base all my decisions on what does John McVay say. What WWJS? And that's WWMS McVay say. No, I'm sorry. I'm not buying in. I don't care whether we won the Super Bowl or not this year. And if he thinks he can get more done at home, I'm just going to disagree with him. I'm sorry. The better way to put it out there, if I were McVay, is Yeah, we lost weeks this year because we were in the Super Bowl. Otherwise, I would have been grinding at the facility the entire month of January. Then that's a reasonable explanation. The fact that we do it better and we work harder at home, I don't believe that. I believe being there, seeing the players, being able to shake somebody's hand, being able to look at a kid who's going to play for you's eyes is more important to me than let me review another round of tape. You can do tape anytime, any place, anywhere. The players are only assembling in a group this large where you can get a look at a lot of guys, shake a lot of hands, make a lot of individual player evaluations in one place. And it's Indianapolis this week. And I think that's a place that every coach in the league should be this week.
Well, I'm going to make this comp in that, when training camps started to shift to home bases rather than people going away a lot, and I'll put myself in this category as well. A lot of people said, "Oh, that doesn't sound like a good idea." But to be honest, and certainly in, today's environment where everything's scaled back, and Doug Pederson was the first to tell me this, it's like, it's much better. It's much better staying at home. I mean, you don't have to drag your equipment. You have everything right there. If you have the type of facility, again, and that's where teams like Dallas and Minnesota have this huge advantage over teams like Cincinnati, who doesn't even have a practice bubble. Maybe they should, continue to go somewhere because they don't spend the money, as we often talk about. So, but you see it all in all. And Dallas weirdly still goes away, even though they have the best facility in the NFL. So, but when people talk about why do you go away for training camp, they say things like, well, camaraderie. And it's not about football. And that's real because you should develop chemistry and camaraderie and try to be together as a team. But I think overall, teams that have the ability to stay at their own facilities, they all understand, oh yeah, this is a lot better than going to a Spartan college campus, where the players are uncomfortable, not getting the best nutrition, not getting the best health, all that kind of, what. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's the exact comparison, but people looked at that sort of the same way, and now it's become second nature. Oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So my only point being is, when you say, yeah, you can look at tape anywhere, that's correct, but you're not leaving, you're not up, you're with your families, you're with your friends, you're able to live your normal life. You don't uproot for a couple days. You don't, again, there's not that pull to go to the bar at night and do all the extracurricular. I can't even say it because it's too early in the morning.
All right. Well, here's where I'll jump in and stop you. If you're so desperate to watch tape, McVay, stay in your room. Go to Indy, shake hands, do what you got to do all day. When they put it to bed at night, stay in your room and watch tape for 6 hours. You don't have to go to whatever steakhouse you want to choose in Indianapolis. If you're there to meet players, and there were players there, and you could continue your evaluation, there might be some value in it. It's not. Let your general manager go, let everybody else go.
As the leader of the organization, I don't think it's about him. I think it's about his vision of the organization. But, the leader of the organization does, he's got to lead. He's got to do what he wants to do. And the vast majority of people are still going and still showing up. I'm not saying it's right. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate. You have you have very few, just to talk to these guys in person. And they'll say, well, we'll do it at the pro days and we'll have our top 30 visits and we'll bring people into the facility now that COVID is winding down because there's other issues in the world. It hasn't hurt them. I will say that. So people are going to look at it and say, well, it hasn't hurt them. So are we doing it the right way? I'm just saying, be prepared. Be prepared.
I'm just saying, I know John McVay's got a Super Bowl ring and I don't. But I'm sorry. If I were a head coach in the National Football League, he's where I would want to be there for both their pro days and the combine.
Well, plus they don't want to deal with the media either. They don't want to deal with the media either. Well, that's part of it as well.
except John McVay was ready to jump to Amazon and become Sean McVay was going to become a member of the media. So, oh my God, he's got to deal with the media.
Oh,
such a hard ask for the Super Bowl winning coach. Yeah, right. Here's why you go to both the combine. If you're a coach, you go both to the combine and the pro day. You play now 17 games in the National Football League. On any given year, you're going to play one extra home game or one extra road game. The combine is like playing a road game. It's not the perfect situation. Shoot, they had to fight tooth and nail just to get their nutritionalist in there and their extra coaches in there. And that was ridiculous. But you're not under perfect situations. You're on a field that you don't know. You have that many more rides on you. That's what is like playing on the road in the National Football League. The pro day is in your stadium, at home, your field. You set all the requirements, and that's a home game. And when you get to the NFL, you're going to have to play home games and road games. So why not be able to evaluate someone in both arenas if you're an evaluator, which I consider a head coach of a football team an evaluator? You're damn straight you should be at both.
Yeah, well, my point is I don't think the workouts are that important for teams. They've never been that important for teams. Now, if you completely crap the what, yeah, it can hurt you. Or if you turn into, we always bring up Mike Mamula locally. If you just are so much better than everybody else, it can help you. But the vast majority of players are in between, and the vast majority of evaluation is done off the film, and that's why I say it's more important for that cottage industry that's popped up than it is for the teams themselves. And again, there's a few exceptions. Guys at the outliers, guys who were spectacular. Micah Parsons last year, guys who terrible. But even look at Orlando Brown, who was just dismal at the combine. One of the worst 40 times ever. I think he ended up going third round. He probably. There were some people who were talking about him as a late first round pick. Certainly, probably would have went the second round. Fell a little bit. So I'm not saying it can't affect you, but it only affects you when you're expected to do something and you're so woefully bad at it that people start asking questions, and then they go back to the film and they say, well, what the hell's going on here? And that's how it goes. I just think, and I've talked to enough people, and we'll probably get Damo and he'll say the same thing. It's not as important as people think it is, the actual workouts for the actual teams. And Chris Landry mentioned that too when we had him on about not last week, but I think the week before. It's just not as important as people think it is.
I think you're right. In the overall evaluation, I don't think it's anything more than a sliver. But to use your Orlando Brown as an example, Ravens took him in the third round. He was a Raven draft, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good player,
maybe, and you don't know this, I don't know this, maybe they drafted him because Coach Harbaugh had a good session with him at the combine. And despite the fact that he ran as slow as he did and had at least analytically a god-awful combine, maybe he actually impressed somebody with his interview. Maybe he said the right thing. Maybe he opened the coach's eyes with the way he went about the business. Maybe because he did as badly as he did, but he handled it well after the fact that they said, yeah, I'm going to throw that time out. I'm not even going to look at his 40 because the kid impressed me. That's not happening for the Rams this year because John McVay has chosen not to come. I think it's highway robbery.
The Rams will be fine.
Yeah, because they got Aaron Donald. Then come out and say that, McVay. Yeah, I don't have to go because we've got Aaron Donald. Not, I can do that much more work at home. Yeah, we'll be at the office grinding away on tape. Yeah, right. All right, Jody McDonald, John McMullen here with you. Nick Sirianni in the house in Indianapolis. And we'll speak to the members of the media tomorrow, hear what the coach has to say. Haven't heard from him since the end of the season. Certainly looking forward to that. Also looking forward to hear from our first guest. He joins us next. You're catching his work these days in Philly Mag and the 33rdteam.com. Our good bud, Paul Domowitch, joins us here on Birds 3.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Mag Birds 365 Combine Kickoff Get-Together Day here with John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We are joined by one of our esteemed colleagues. He's only been covering the Birds for decades, doing these days for Philly Mag, writing great national stuff for the 33rd-team.com, including a Combine article that Johnny Mac raved over yesterday. I said, shoot, I guess I got to read Domo, which I did. And he was right. It was a very good Combine article. Paul Domowitch joins us here on Birds 365. Hello, Domo.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah, that was a great intro. Come on. Did you love that, Jody? I had to read Domo. You know, you blame Jody. I told him to do it.
The kind words, John.
Well, let's start there because it was a great piece and everybody should check it out at the 33rdteam.com. Has the Combine outlived its usefulness? So I'll start there. Has it outlived it? Because I think, you know, Sean McVay's not going again. Kyle Shanahan's not going. Robert Saleh's not going. These are NFL head coaches that aren't going to the stinking Combine.
Yeah. I mean, the important GMs and scouts have been telling us for years. The most important part of this is medicals, and the measurables, and we've kind of always raised an eyebrow, but it's true. When I say it's outlived its usefulness, the workouts are not going to go away because now it's a national television event. So the league, but what I think we might see happen is it's just going to become a separate thing where you might have cash prizes to get these guys to go out to LA or someplace to participate in workouts that would turn into basically a contest. And then you would still have the medicals and the measurables someplace else, plus the pro days. I mean, the pro days are why this thing has kind of become, may have outlived its usefulness because players prefer to work out at their pro days. It's a more comfortable environment. They're getting out of their own bed in the morning. They're throwing, if they're a quarterback, they're throwing to their own receivers instead of guys they had never met until they got to the Combine. So, that's why it may have outlived its usefulness.
All right. Maybe I'm old school, but maybe I'm right too. As I just said to John before you joined us, Tomo, the reason why I still like the Combine, and if I were a talent evaluator, I would still want the Combine and value the Combine. It's like playing a road game. And there was a big kerfuffle about how they were going to actually do this year's combines, the whole bubble thing was a bit much. The NFL bit off more than it could chew and had to back off that position pretty quickly when challenged. But yeah, I want to know, can a guy deal with not perfect settings? You got to do that on the road. And you get on a plane. You got to fly across the country. You got to stay in a hotel. The hotels they stay in are probably pretty damn comfortable beds, but you get the point. I don't want them to be able to set all the players to dictate all the terms of how they're going to show off for me. Yeah, it's great that they have pro days, but pro days are so player friendly and they have so many things that are set up exactly by them. Tell me how a guy works out. Tell me how a guy does his job when it isn't ultimate settings. That's why I like the combine, and I hope it never goes away.
Yeah, I mean, you guys read the story. Some of the complaints by the agents about the combine kind of come off as diva-like. I mean, not having their nutritionist there, not having their own strength coach there when they're doing the 225 bench, a cold environment because they have to walk across the street from the hotel to a dome, which is 72 degrees. So I don't know where the cold comes in other than the walk.
Well, that walk is tough, Domo. I was waiting for the green M&Ms only. Yeah. You got to have the green M&Ms.
Exactly. I mean, John, you remember the days when, I mean, agents have forever been telling these guys not to work out there because they didn't think the conditions were optimal. I mean, I mentioned in the story that they went through it at a time. They kept changing the surface that they ran the 40 on because the players were complaining it was too slow. So they were trying to entice them to work out there by getting a faster surface, things like that. So, I mean, you're right, Jody.
Now, Dama, one of the issues I have with the combine is sort of the unintended consequence of they made it this big thing. They turned it into this. And I said it's created almost a cottage industry. And then, hey, I like all these people covering the draft as much as anybody. But, you have these kids playing college football and, then they're about to enter the draft and they spend their entire spring, specifically working out, not for football, but to make sure they have a good 40 time or they, if you're an offensive lineman, you can get your 225 up to 35. And, if people know in the old days, Deion Sanders, he just showed up and ran faster than everybody else. And you knew, well, this guy's stinking fast. He's not training to be a track star to get ready for the combine. How did people talk at all about the unintended consequence of making this thing such a big event, turning it in a negative direction when it comes to evaluation?
Well, I mean, the league likes what it's turned into because all they care about are people that are going to watch it on TV. They put all the drills or almost all the drills in prime time now. It gives them it gives them a bridge from the Super Bowl to the draft now, where people can focus on football and not think about Jody's favorite pastime, baseball.
They don't have to worry about that.
Now, you're right about the unintended consequences. They were, these guys are being taught by track coaches at their training centers how to, how to get off to a quick start to run a good 40. Which, what does that have to do with when you line up on Sunday once you're playing football? So it seems like the league is starting to adjust some of these drills to be more football focused, mostly the position drills, the movements, things they're going to do on the field. They're using GPS more now so that, they'll get times on what these guys actually run in football situations rather than just that 40-yard dash. So, they're trying to offset some of that the unintended consequences that you talked about regarding the what's happening. But overall, they love it that just this thing has become such an event, and that's, for the league, that's all they care about.
Here's where I would want the combine if I were someone tied to an organization. Where else can you get face-to-face tampering out of the start of the league year? I mean, that all the GMs and their assistants and will be having little conversations with guys' agents who are potential free agents, and they'll mask it in. well, he's got a player coming up in the draft, and we have some consideration for the player. We want to get some. No, they're talking about potential free agents and like laying groundwork for deals. It's the biggest open air tampering event that the sport has every single year. If they did away with it, where the hell would they do all their tampering?
Well, they do it on Zoom, I guess, now. But you're right, it gives them a head start. I mean, although a lot of agents, just like you, John had mentioned about a lot of coaches not being there this year, a lot of agents aren't going because apparently they're having their, they always have their agent, an annual agents meeting there at the combine. And this year, I guess they're doing it on Zoom, which is going to discourage a lot of these agents from actually being there in person. So, but yeah, I mean, every year you would always see, the Eagles people.
Damo, I'm sorry. Damo, hold on. Let me interrupt here. I don't. You've lost me. The agents who fought for it to be non-bubbled because they want the players to have absolutely everything. They're going to Zoom because COVID.
I don't want to go.
Why the hell are they? Why aren't they in Indianapolis? They want the players to have freedom to do whatever they want, but for them, they'll just have their meeting via Zoom. That doesn't add up to me.
Well, the union runs the meeting, so they're in charge of that. But yeah, you're right. But a lot of the agents, their main focus for being there is protecting their clients from getting stolen by another agent. For years, it would be hilarious. I mean, I remember going back to the day. My first combine was 1987. I was the only guy there from the media. But in those first few years, you would see fights in the lobby. I mean, fights as far as two agents fighting, which is basically like, hold me back, hold me back. You'd see Drew Rosenhaus fighting with some guy in a long leather coat over, who stole whose client and things like that. So that's usually their main focus of going there. And that's kind of one of the main reasons they were upset over the bubble that was initially going to be used, because they wouldn't have had contact with their clients during the combine.
Yeah, it is interesting from an agent's perspective, because I think, when whatever the number was, when they threatened to boycott, it was, pretty significant, 150, I forget, whatever it was. But I think it was 12 agents. So, the power, there's so few agents. There's these high-powered agencies, and you're talking about 12 guys, so the fights are not as exciting because you see the same guys, fighting over and over again. But yeah, from the perspective though of evaluation, and Jody and I were talking about this, and everybody, and part of it, and I get it. Sean McVay, everything Sean McVay does now, Jody's risking getting banned from the NFL by criticizing Sean McVay.
Not scared.
But there are other guys, and Kyle Shanahan obviously is well regarded as well. Robert Saleh, obviously, is a Kyle Shanahan guy, so they're not going. You mentioned some of the agents aren't going. Part of it is Zoom, part of it is virtual. Is there any sort of danger does the league see from, or are they just completely focused on the television vehicle, and they don't care about the other stuff? They only care about people tuning in.
Yeah, I mean, the league itself, I think that's all they care about. The people in New York, the owners, they just want to make this. I mean, it's all about the bottom line, and anything that makes this league more popular, and now will get people to gamble and everything else. They're focused on now. It's obviously different for the football people. I mean, they want to get as many looks as they can at these guys. But if you're a coach, going here to watch a guy run a 40, you've got film you can watch these guys on. Now you can do you're allotted. I forget the new rules, but they have a limit on the interviews at the combine, but they've also added a layer of interviews with players on Zoom now. So, you can do everything on Zoom with a guy that you could do in a room, including test him on, test him on a whiteboard and then things like that I don't know. I don't know the mechanics of how you do that on Zoom, but it can be done. So, if they don't have to travel, they don't want to. I think the coaches mostly liked Indianapolis for so they could go get a steak at St. Elmo's and drink in the hotel bar most of the night.
Yeah.
So,
as I said to John earlier, if you're that motivated to watch tape, go up to your room. Don't go to St. Elmo's. But
you got to go to St. Elmo's, Joe.
Well, I went to St. Elmo's when I was out there for the baseball winter meetings one year. It was a good steak, but if I've got work to do, if I had to prep for the next day show, I would have stayed in my hotel room.
Peer pressure.
I'm not buying into the. It's not what it used to be. Here's where I think is still key, because you're going to get drafted. Somebody's going to take you, and the other 31 teams are going to become the enemy, except if you have a long memory. And if you have a coach that in the interview process that you kind of liked, at some point a guy may become a free agent and he could say, well, no, I like playing for that coach. If all things are equal and I can play for this coach rather than that coach, even that little 1%, Damo, maybe I'm narrow focusing this, but I always want to get an edge. Get an edge any way you can. And the combine is a place where you can get an edge in team building.
Yeah. And also, the fact that this has become a national primetime event now has made a lot of these guys want to compete at the combine because they can be seen by their family, by everybody. They like being on TV as opposed to, for years, the league had to convince these guys or tried to convince these guys, you're getting it better to get 2 bites at the apple as far as your workouts than just one. If you don't compete at the combine and go to the pro day and you do poorly, that's your time. The league tried to convince these guys that, we're going to take your best times. We're going to take your best vertical jumps. The agents would say, yeah, that's baloney. If all 32 coaches, GMs, and owners are in Indy, you perform poorly there, they won't forget that. So it's kind of like who you believe there. But I always felt that, if I were there, one of the invitees, I'd rather if I can compete twice and I believe they're going to take my best score, why would I only do it once?
Right.
When you could get sick the night before your pro day, anything could happen that would affect that. So I wouldn't want it to come down to that when my career's on the line.
Well, I brought up Orlando Brown because I think, or Orlando Brown Jr. Because recently there's a kid who, to bet at the combine. I think he ran like a 5.85. just a disaster. And he did 18 reps on the bench. And he turned in from a potential first-round pick to a third-round pick. And then, people in Philadelphia, I automatically go to Mike Mamula, maybe the first sort of combine star. Last year was Micah Parsons a little bit. Just so much better. The workouts themselves, do they mean that much unless you're that outlier? Unless you're like a superstar or you do so much worse than everybody thought, people start thinking, all right, we gotta look at this kid and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. The in-between, the guys and that's the vast majority, they kind of know what they're going to do. And if they do it, how much do the workouts really mean?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned Orlando Brown. I think he was the exception with regard to highly regarded guys who wet the bed and fell. I think mostly the combine and these workouts help guys who are mid-round, are pegged mid-round, and then go there and maybe run a 4.4, 4.3, jump through the sky, really perform well and help themselves. I think it's mostly a positive effect for guys like that. I think if they compete and do what pretty much people expected of them, which, like, say you're a corner and you run a high 4.5, you're going to go where they probably had you pegged off the film. So for those guys, I think it helps working out at the combine or the pro days as opposed to hurting them.
Dama, let's get Eagle specific, and a guy like yourself who went out there for years to cover the Eagles while watching the combine. They're going to have their fair share of Eagle beat guys out there although I don't know how they're going to get by without McMullen, but they will. What number question from the Eagle Beat guys when Harry Roseman has his media availability tomorrow? What number question should be, Howie, and about your contract? Because we're a couple weeks away from him potentially being a lame duck general manager. If you were on the beat and you were there, would that be your question? If you had the leadoff spot, would you be the first guy to go? And Howie, we got to ask you about your contract. How quickly should that question come, and what do you think Howie's answer is going to be?
He'll say the typical, just like I do with players, I don't talk about contract situations. So it wouldn't be the first question I'd ask because there's no mystery.
Know the answer, yeah.
Yeah, there's no mystery that he's staying or that he's getting a new contract. So, but you still got to ask it at some point. There's enough time with him at the combine and few enough people that you're able to ask multiple questions. So I would ask it at some point if it were just me. But again, it wouldn't be the top question. I mean, you want to find out, you want to get him on the record again about what he said about Jalen Hurts being his quarterback in 2022, to follow that up with, the Russell Wilson rumors, things like that, and then get into, they don't usually tell you anything about players there. They used to. I mean, you could actually get a pretty good, decent comment on an evaluation on a guy. Now they won't go there. And the problem also going to the combine and asking questions about the draft and the players there is, everything is dictated by what they do in free agency first. If they address some positions in free agency, it's going to change their draft strategy. So it kind of, you don't get a lot from Howie there. Unless you ask some questions that he seems to want to talk about. I don't know what they would be this year, but, I think we're going to have questions about Russell Wilson. We're going to have questions about Jalen Hurts. We're going to have questions about those 3 first-round picks and whether they'd be willing to trade them, where they're looking, the strength of the edge rush class, things like that will be the questions that'll be first and foremost asked of him.
Domo, how about the personnel department? I mean, it's taken a pretty big hit right before the draft in that Ian Cunningham's now in Chicago, Brandon Brown's with the Giants. Andy Waddle's going to be here, but he got an interview to be the GM of the Steelers. Kevin Colbert's going to stay until after the draft, so that wouldn't be till later. But look, the Eagles are deep. They have one of the biggest personnel departments in the NFL, and I just, when Cincinnati got to the Super Bowl and I saw it's basically, Duke Tobin and 3 interns, the Eagles go 21 deep. 21 deep they were when Brown and Cunningham were here in the scouting department. Big deal? Not a big deal? Losing guys like that?
Yeah, I mean, you suffer enough hits, it starts to take its effect. I'll be interested to see what they do. I think it was on this show a few weeks back. One of you guys asked me about Mike Mayock.
Yeah,
and
Jody
loves him. I kind of said, I didn't think how he would go there because I thought he would be threatened a little bit. After thinking about it, I'm not so sure because he's done this before. The John Dorseys and the people that might threaten him. I mean, the difference is Mike's a Philly guy, popular, and but he's he didn't. I mean, he had some poor drafts in Oakland / Vegas that kind of led. I mean, they were part of the reason he was fired, not largely the reason, but I think he's a guy that Howie would benefit from bringing in some capacity, or at least as an advisor, and do with him like he did with John Dorsey, where you have him watch film. I'm sure Howie, just like Lurie does with coaches, he's got a list of people so that when things like this happen, and I mean, I don't think Andy Weidl's going anywhere, but maybe Pittsburgh hires him, but I just don't see that.
It's a Pittsburgh guy, Damo. Pittsburgh guy started there.
Yeah, I know, and they like him. I mean, that's why he got the interview. I think they have some names, probably some young people, up and comers that Howie would like to hire if the opportunity arises and he has some openings or he just wants to hire them. So it's a concern, the hits he's taken with regard to his personnel staff, but he's done I got to say he's done a pretty good job of finding people. I mean, he's got good people on his staff. We can question some of his draft picks and who was responsible for them and how much of the blame lies with him. But he's also had some good picks, and so it doesn't concern me that he won't be able to replace anybody he loses.
I download with Mac and I doing this every day, and me reading his Philly Boys columns. John has pretty much laid two things out for me. Two things you can expect not to happen in this upcoming draft. Number one, Eagles are going to take a linebacker in the first round because, it hasn't happened in decades. And number two, Howie Roseman's not going back to wide. He can't go wide receiver in the first round for 3 straight years. He just can't do it. And he's probably right about both of those two things. But if he's wrong about one of them, which is it going to be? That the Eagles will take a linebacker in the first round, or Howie will, if they keep all 3 picks, say, yeah, I still have a need at wide receiver. And that, of course, could be somewhat dictated by if they strike out in free agency and landing a wide receiver, if he's kind of up against it, which has got a better chance, as small as that percentage may be of happening, Eagles take a wide out or Eagles take a linebacker in the first round.
I'm going to go with the second one. I agree. I think their preference is to find a wide receiver to pair with Devontae Smith in free agency. But if the circumstances don't make that happen, if they're asking for too much money, if somebody else jumps in and signs them, it would not surprise me to see them use, if they keep all 3 of those picks, right, to use one of them on a wide receiver. Daniel Jeremiah was asked this question on the conference call with reporters late last week, and the name he brought up was Garrett Wilson, the Ohio State wide receiver. Said he brings to the table kind of a combination of a guy, a power guy and a speed guy. I mean, he's about 6 foot, 190 pounds, but so getting back to the original point, though, that would be the one I'd pick. I still don't think it's likely. I think they'll get one in free agency, but I think that's more likely than the linebacker in the first round.
All right, for me, Dom, I'm going to go percentages with you. I want a percentage that the Eagles actually take all 3 of those first-round picks in this draft, and then I want a percentage that one of them is an edge rusher, which I think is 100%.
yeah, at least one edge rusher. Yeah. I'm gonna go 50% on them keeping all 3 because I everything's connected to something else here. I mean, whether they keep the 3 picks is connected to whether they go get a veteran quarterback, which they say they're won't, but I don't necessarily know if that's true or not. But if they don't, you would think you'd want to move one of your first round picks to next year, so you have an extra one next year. When if Jalen Hurts does not turn out to be the future, you can get a quarterback next year in a deeper draft of quarterbacks. So that's why I'd say 50%. And on the edge rusher, 100%. I mean, it just all the pieces fit. They're not going to get the first 2 guys. But there's 3, 4, maybe 5 guys that are going to be right there between 15 and 20 that they can have their pick at. So that's I think that's almost a sure thing.
All right, Damo. Free agency starts in just over 2 weeks from now with the start of the league year. And then you've got another month and change, 6 more weeks you got to wait before the draft. Will Derek Barnett sign with anyone during that 6-week period? Or is he going to have to wait for the teams to go, yeah, we kind of like you, but we'll get back to you the first week of May after the draft is over and done with? Is somebody actually going to step out and say, no, we really like Derek Barnett and get him signed? Or is he going to have to sit around and wait till after the draft?
Well, I don't think anybody's going to stand up and say, I really like Derek Barnett right now. But, it depends on what he and his agent think. I mean, are they looking for a 1-year deal and a chance to prove that he can play someplace else and then work on a long-term contract next year? If that's the case, maybe somebody signs him early. My guess is he hangs around for a while. and then ends up signing a 1-year deal because nobody's going to give him, you know, a lot of money and a lot of years based on what we've seen from him.
All right, last one from me, Tomo. We got to talk about the quarterback. Before that, make sure you read Tomo at the 33rdteam.com, especially that combine piece. Celebrate the start of the combine by debating its usefulness moving forward. But as far as Jalen Hurts, you know, one thing we talk about, and a lot of people bring up, and I think short term it makes a lot of sense. Look, if you trade for Russell Wilson, if he happened, you know, there's so many hurdles. Seattle has to say we want to trade him. Then he has to say, okay, I'll accept a trade to Philadelphia. Then you have to give significant assets. And people bring up what you would have to pay Russell Wilson or just Sean Watson or somebody of that nature, which is legitimate. And Jalen Hurts is set to get, I think, $1.6 million this year. But Howie's got to think about things in 2-3 year windows. Decision time is coming up on Jalen Hurts. This is it. After this year, then you got to make a decision. I brought this up to Jody. If he has the similar type years he had this year, say statistically, a lot of big plays, maybe you're 9-8 first round and out in the playoffs, just a good Pro Bowl alternate, just a good solid quarterback, but not a star quarterback. The going rate for that is going to be $30 million a year. And all of a sudden, you know, there's no more cost effective, and you got to make a serious decision on Jalen Hurts. Plus, you have the 3 first-round picks. You don't have that every year. Does all of that create a bigger sense of urgency than we think for Howie Roseman this offseason to make a decision at the quarterback position?
Well, I mean, I think he can afford to wait until after next season to make a decision, because this will be Jalen's 3rd year, so he wouldn't
So
be
he's
going
got one more year. He's got one more year.
He wouldn't be able to become a free agent as a 2nd-round pick until after the 2023 season. Correct? Am I correct there?
But if you know, as you see with the 2018 class, Jordan Mailata, Josh Sweat, Dallas Goedert, Vontae Maddox, you get that extension before. If he plays at that level, and we have 2 Pro Bowl alternate seasons, we have 2 playoff appearances. His agent, you saw Kyler Murray's missive. You see what's going on in Arizona. His agent's not going to say, okay, we'll play out the 4th year of our rookie deal. He's going to want that extension.
Well, the worst case scenario with a quarterback in this league right now is a Baker Mayfield type of situation. You don't know what you got. You know, you get to the end of his contract. You don't think he's a franchise player, but he might be better than pretty much what you're going to be able to get out there unless you give away the bank. So you've got to decide, well, do we pay this guy more money than he's worth and believe we can win with this guy, or do we go look somewhere else? And that ultimately will be a decision they'll have to make on Jalen. You know, when I look at this particular situation, I mean, Jalen improved this year. I believe he'll improve next year. But what we don't know, what Howie doesn't know, is what's his ceiling. I mean, is he just going to end up being a very good quarterback, a decent quarterback who can also be a factor as a runner, or is he not going to be that? And Howie needs, and that's why Howie gets paid the big bucks. I mean, because he's kind of got to project that now a little bit. I think he'll sit tight. I think he'll wait, see what he sees next year before making this decision. And if he has draft picks, he can always draft a guy next year. But, you get back to the Russell Wilson situation here. And with Howie, we just saw the Rams win a Super Bowl going all in. The big trade with the quarterback, giving away your draft picks. Matthew Stafford helps him win a Super Bowl. You can argue, whether he was the main factor or not. But and Howie sometimes is influenced by things like that. So does he say we can do the same thing with Russell Wilson? But, the Rams had the other pieces for the most part. The Eagles don't. They have to rebuild an entire defense. If you trade away 2 or even all 3 of your first-round picks this year, how do you rebuild that defense? So that's my reluctance, even if I didn't fully believe Jalen could be a franchise quarterback, is, they're not a team right now that can, if Russell Wilson comes here, is probably going to win the Super Bowl in the next year or two, like the Rams were capable of doing with the Goff-Stafford trade. So that would make me reluctant to pull the trigger on a deal for Russell Wilson right now. Russell Wilson's probably he's got probably 4 more Pro Bowl level years left at least. But I still don't want to trade 3 first-round picks for a 34-year-old quarterback.
All right, Damo, last one for me. I'll wrap on this. You're in a unique situation to be able to be asked and then answer a question like this. You're quasi-retired. You're not on the beat every single day, but you're still covering the Eagles for Philly Mag and the whole league for 33rd team. Let's say your boss gets in touch with you from the 33rd team and says, hey, Damo, we do real well with clicks south of the border. And the Eagles and the Cardinals are playing in a Studio Azteca, the stadium down there in Mexico City. We need you to go down there a couple days in advance. Get some Eagle fans who went down to see the game. Give us the feel of how the return to Mexico, because no COVID game last year, plays in Mexico this year. If they offered you that assignment, would you say yay or nay?
I'd say nay.
Come on, great Corona down there. Real life Corona.
We're getting fake Corona? Is that what we're saying?
I've kind of gotten used to not getting on an airplane, Jody, and
it's nice.
Like
that part's nice.
Yeah.
Has your passport lapsed?
It has not.
Okay. Well,
I think I still got a couple more years
they
left
might
now.
not make it a question. They might make it a demand. And I'm
Yeah,
sorry if anyone from the 33rd team is listening and you get stuck with this assignment next year.
With all due respect to the people that run 33rd team, given what they're paying me, I don't think they're going to ask me to go to Stadium Azteca.
Damo, no, you like us. We'll be in front of the TV watching some of the combine stuff. We can build it up. We can tear it down, whatever else, but it's going to be on TV and it's Eagles content. So we will be taking it in. We appreciate you sharing Eagles content with us today. Thanks, bud.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Paul Domowitch, 33rdteam.com and Philly Mag covering the Eagles here with us on Birds 365. All right. I threw it out there as a question, but I'll make it one for my partner as well. Are you looking forward to going to Mexico? It's not official, but there's a good chance the Philadelphia Eagles could be playing, going on the road, Birds fans. We know the Eagles are one of the best traveling teams in the NFL. Can you take it south of the border? I'll discuss that with John McMullen when we come back here on Birds 360.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say We got this. Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Get your Mac and Mac guys here on Merch 365. McDonald and McMullen hanging with you. Going to have a fun guest coming up about less than 20 minutes from now from NBC Sports Philly. Johnny Happy. John Clark is going to jump aboard. He's had
Johnny
some
Airport, Johnny Sunshine. There's a lot of Johnnies.
He's got a couple nicknames, as a matter of fact. Has had a couple of pretty damn good guests on his Takeoff podcast of late, and he covers the Eagles all year long for NBC Sports Philly. So John Clark going to join us coming up less than 20 minutes from now. I'm guessing John Clark would be asked to head down to Stadia Azteca if the Eagles are playing the Cardinals this year on the road south of the border. You got your passport up to date, McMullen, if needed?
No, I don't. I got to get that done. It is not up to date. So, yeah, crossing my fingers. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think there's a lot of politics involved. I think they'd rather have a California team go down there with them for obvious reasons. But then you start talking about, Arizona probably doesn't want to. It's a home game for Arizona, so they don't want to play a division home game on the road, essentially on a neutral environment,
neutral field.
So then you start talking about non-division opponents, and I think two of them are already locked up with other international games. So I think it comes, then it would be the Eagles in a group with a couple others. Chiefs are in there, I think. Patriots are in there. So some pretty high profile teams. It's going to be interesting. But, would I go? Yeah, I'd go. But I prefer that it's not on the schedule simply because I don't want the headaches of updating the passport and doing all those things.
Right. And by the way, be careful of the water you drink when you're down there.
You can't.
Get you in trouble as well.
Yeah. Bottled Corona.
But Jeff Lurie is a pretty big proponent of international football. If there's any would you like to go type looking at it, evaluating this, I don't think the Eagles would say no.
No, I don't think they would say no, but especially because it's a road game, the only issue becomes when it's a home game for different teams. Now, some like it. Jacksonville, obviously, goes to the UK every year, but non-bubble year. But everybody in the league says they like international games, want to open up international games, but the logistics when you have to do it is not fun. So it becomes one of those things. As an owner, you say, yeah, we want to open up these markets, and they're going to have a game in Germany this year. But then when you actually have to go through it, it's not the funnest thing in the world, certainly for the teams and the players. And you start talking about, playoff positioning and everything's so close in the NFL, and you're giving up a home game at times. If you are that home team, a lot of things go into it.
And you took me to my next question. Thank you very much. Because the game in Munich, Germany will include the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're going to give up one of their 9 home games this year. NFC teams all have the extra home game. Last year, the AFC teams had the extra home game, so all the NFC teams played an extra road game. This year, it flips. The NFC teams have the extra home game, and the 9th one for the Bucs is going to be played in Munich, Germany. They probably started to lay the groundwork for this before that Brady guy decided to retire and be a pretty good guy to put over to Germany if you're looking to grow that market.
Blaine Gabbert not going to do it for you?
Oh, Blaine Gabbert. Yeah, I can't believe. Hey, I'll give the coach credit. He says it with a straight face when he does, which I think is very difficult.
I get. You know what I love? I saw some Mitchell Trubisky information. Oh, how many teams want? You'd be surprised how many teams want Mitchell Trubisky. Where do you think that info came from? Speaking of agents in Indianapolis, well, somebody's on Zoom at least, because that's leaking out there. Yeah, everybody's getting in line for Mitchell Trubisky. Look out.
And it'll be very interesting. Yeah, if Trubisky gets a place where he's going to be able to go and compete, I'm sure that's where he's going to go. But I've got a buddy in New York who told me that the Giants will be players for Mitch Trubisky.
Well, don't get me wrong. Because there's such a dearth of quarterbacks, he's going to get an opportunity. I'm just laughing at the point of teams are lining up. Look, you're going – we know all the names, and the vast majority aren't leaving. That's the problem. You know, Aaron Rodgers looks like he's going back to Green Bay. If he doesn't, you know, it's pretty much Denver, and that's it. And then we go down from there. And the Russell Wilsons and Deshaun Watson and Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins and on, and even Jameis Winston and on and on and on. You know, you're going through a lot of names before you get to Mitchell Trubisky. If you're serious about the quarterback market, is all I'm saying. But he will get an opportunity because there's not 32 starting level quarterbacks in this league.
Well, then let me try and pin you down a little bit further. He will get an opportunity. I need you to define that for me. Is he going to sign? Hold on, John. I got to ask the question before you answer it, all right?
Sure. Go ahead.
Will he get a job as a backup quarterback? Will he be able to compete for a quarterback position, or will he be the starter when camp opens? How interested are teams around the National Football League about Trubisky?
I think he will get an opportunity to be a starter, in that, you know, you might have a young quarterback and you might bring him in, and let them compete. It might be a situation, as you mentioned, with the Giants, where you have a starter who's not great, and certainly is going to have a leg up. But if Daniel Jones would not perform well, he would have an opportunity. I don't think anybody's going to sign Mitchell Trubisky and have a press conference and have the balloons out there and say, oh, our starting quarterback, get behind Mitchell. You know, you want to sell tickets. You want to get people excited. That's not the way to do it. And, you know, that's how agents work it. I mean, they leak information to certain reporters, and, you know, I always give Mike Sealski credit for that. Our buddy from the Inquirer, he calls it information brokers, and that's what they are. And they leak that information out, and teams are really excited about Mitchell Trubisky, and he was really hurt by Matt Nagy, who all of a sudden is an idiot, even though he got to the playoffs with Mitchell Trubisky, and he really benefited from his year in Buffalo. And obviously that's where the connection with the Giants is, because Joe Schoen is there and Brian Daboll is there now. So, you know, people put 2 and 2 together. Maybe that's how it shakes out. But I find it very hard to believe that any team is going to say, we need a quarterback, let's go target Mitchell Trubisky. But he'll get an opportunity. So that's my definition of opportunity.
Gotcha. And I think New York is actually a good landing spot for him. I'm not a Trubisky fan. I think that you're right. I don't put his inability to win playoff games and or his making the playoff games on Matt Nagy. I just think he's an okay quarterback at best. I'm not sure that Daniel Jones is even that. So if there are how many jobs out there, yeah, he could go down and beat out whoever's going to be the Tampa quarterback right now. New York, there's a handful of teams where he'd have a legit chance to compete and maybe steal a job when the season opens. There aren't a ton of them. There are some, but there's a whole bunch of teams already locked in, right, wrong, or indifferent. You don't think he'd actually be able to come here to Philadelphia and compete with Jalen Hurts? Eagles wouldn't do anything like that, would they?
No, I think Jalen's more entrenched than that, than where he's going to be concerned with Mitchell Trubisky. Look, I think Jalen played very well last season, and we brought it up a lot. There's Greg Rosenthal's NFL.com rankings for the quarterbacks because I think they were good. I think they were pretty much spot on. You know, you can always argue certain players should be a couple spots up or down. And he had Jalen Hurts at 17 and Gardner Minshew too, I think was 37. So I thought it was really fair in that Minshew's probably a top 5 backup. Jalen's probably right there, middle of the road, starting quarterback. And that's my concern. I've been bringing it up a couple times. I brought it up with you. I brought it up with Damo. He's a good quarterback. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. But then you get in this conversation, and I'm going to try to get Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus on because he's really hard with this. And I know he's at the Combine, so I'll probably try next week. And he's really steadfast that with guys like Cousins and Carr and that sort of good but not great quarterback, you can't pay him the money they're getting paid and win because it affects the back end of your roster. And you know how that works. And that's why I keep bringing up people don't realize how quickly that's going to come for Jalen Hurts. And it's going to come right at the time when the salary cap is going to spike because that new money starts flooding in from the TV deals. He's going to get paid a massive, massive amount of money. So that's why I say when people say, well, you can't pay Russell Wilson, you got to pay him so much money. You got to pay to show. All right, you're thinking about 1 year, and that's legitimate for 1 year. But if he plays like you think he's going to play, if he doesn't improve, we just heard Damo say he's going to improve. I think he's going to improve. You think he's going to improve, I think. Well, if he improves over last year, he's going to get paid a boatload of money. And then you're in Kirk Cousins' world where you got to pay a quarterback who's good, but he's not great, all this money, and that affects everywhere else on your roster. And that's what the Eagles are looking at. And it's not here, but you can see it on the horizon. If you're in the car, you can see it on the horizon.
Two things where I most certainly agree with you. Yeah, you asked me, do you think he's going to improve? Oh, I think Eagle fans are going to hate me for this, but I'm giving you my honest opinion. The worst case scenario is going to happen because there's 3 ways it can go with Jalen Hurts this year. One is he's phenomenal. They had him, as you quoted the Pro Football Focus rankings, at the 17th quarterback. He's not jumping up into the top 6 or 7. That's not happening. That would be great. He's not falling down to number 29 where you go, okay, we know what we got to do. We got to get ourselves a new quarterback. This guy actually regressed. No, I think you'll see incremental improvement this year, which will be after his rookie year. There was incremental improvement this year. You get incremental improvement next year, which leaves you right there in the middle as to what you're referring to. If you're in the top 15, you're right there in the middle. You're going to get paid. It skyrockets, which, oh, by the way, as a second-round pick, that's a year earlier. Now, the 5th year for the rookie quarterbacks, they go up pretty quickly, but not as quickly as free agent money takes you. So you're actually at a 1-year disadvantage because he's a second-round pick because he can get to free agency a year earlier than a first-round quarterback is taken. So, yeah, I kind of fear that that's worst-case scenario. You'd want them either to be really good, so you're confident about it, or really bad, so you know you got to move on. I think we'll see the same thing from Jalen Hurts because he's got some skills. He's got some capabilities. He's not going to set the world on fire when you watch him on tape. He's never going to be that wow skills guy. So you're going to be left kind of in the middle. And sometimes in the middle is the worst place to be.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I'm amazed that so many people say, well, he's under contract through 2023, which is correct. So they think, well, you have 2 years. No, you don't. I mean, you see it now with Kyler Murray, different type, obviously is a top, pedigree pick, but you're talking about 2 years he would be coming off after this season if he just plays the same. 2 years of really effective football, as you said, probably middle of the range league wide. Well, he's not going to sit there and go into the next season as a lame duck. His agent's going to be stomping and stamping her. So I need an extension. I need, it's going to be big, big, big money. It's going to be big money. So you can't just say, I don't want to pay Russell Wilson. I don't want to pay Deshaun Watson, which so many people have said. That's fine. You're going to have to pay Jalen Hurts. If you think these same people think Jalen Hurts is going to be an improving player, if that's the case, you're just kicking the can down the road, like so many criticize Howie Roseman for, because the bill is coming due either way. And do you want a superstar or do you want a middle of the road purgatory guy?
Here's the reason why I'm not as worried about the scenario that you just laid out there. That's not Jalen Hurts. We saw that it was Kyler Murray. Dropped all his social media contact with the Cardinals, blah, blah, blah. He set the stage for his agent to come out and go, hey, you know, my guy, we're good. We want to be with the Cardinals. They want us. We want them. Let's start talking about a contract. Jalen Hurts isn't going to play that game. That's not his personality. He's a work hard, work ethic, I'm there for the team, leader type guy. I don't think he goes down the road of even via social media diva to go, yeah, and I need my contract extended. I think you really can take the entire 2 years to evaluate Jalen Hurts. If he has a middle of the road year next year, I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to try and grandstand into an extension.
I agree that Jalen's not going to be a diva, but his agent, Nicole Lynn, is not going to sit by and let Jalen be taken advantage of her. That's what she gets paid for. And that's what every agent does. There's not a player in this league, and especially at the quarterback position, we talk about lame duck and Howie being a lame duck and lame duck coaches. Same thing with the quarterback. You don't want to be a lame duck quarterback. I'm just saying it's not going to happen. I mean, there's going to be – now, it might be a team-friendly extension. I'm not saying the Eagles aren't going to get it done if he plays at that. I'm saying, is that the position that you want to be in? Because even team-friendly – remember, Carson Wentz was team-friendly back in the day. You're going to have to pay a lot of money. So the people arguing that that's the reason they don't want to go after Russell Wilson, if Russell Wilson is available, Deshaun Watson, if Deshaun Watson comes available. I'm just saying that finance argument, Jody, doesn't hold water because that's just a short-term thing. Either way, you're going to be paying big money for a quarterback in 2 years, whether Jalen Hurts continues to develop and play at the level he is, or you go out and get a superstar quarterback right now.
Unless,
or you can turn it over.
With the 19th pick in the draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Kenny Pickett from the University of Pittsburgh. I like the way you describe it. Get an extra dart to throw at the board going forward. Not impossible. I would say unlikely. I'd say the percentage of the Eagles doing that is small, but it's not a zero either, that they could take a quarterback with one of their 3 first-round picks. All right, Jody McDonald, John McMullen, we are your Mac and Mac guys. We're hoping to punch up next. Johnny Sunshine, our buddy John Clark from NBC Sports Philadelphia, has had some good guests, specifically Eagle guests, on his Takeoff podcast of late. Want to get some Eagles questions for John Clark, hopefully next here on Birds 360.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
You got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Thank you for jumping aboard, streaming in with us. Hopping aboard with us right now. You see him on NBC Sports Philly. You see him on NBC 10. You may see him on a tennis course somewhere near your house. John Clark joins us here on Birds 365. How you been, JC?
Been really good. How about you guys? How you doing?
Good to see you, John. Johnny Airport, and don't forget Takeoff with John Clark. So great podcast with so many big-name Philadelphia stars. Tremendous podcast. I would argue best in the city. So everybody take a look at that. John, we're an Eagles-based show, but I want to talk a little Ben Simmons, but I'll save that for last. But Eagles-wise, you've had so many guys on your podcast recently talking about Jalen Hurts, and that's the number one issue as this team moves forward. And you saw the press conference and Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, sort of that vote of confidence for Jalen Hurts. But we know this team, they do their due diligence. They're going to make the phone calls. Where are they with the quarterback one of this team? Is it 100% Jalen Hurts, or are you leaving a little bit of a door open to go in a potentially different direction?
Well, thanks a lot for giving a shout out to the podcast. And yeah, that is the number one discussion. Will Jalen Hurts be the quarterback this year? And I found it really interesting after the season ended when Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni said Jalen Hurts is our guy. And I think the key part is they told him that he is their guy. So I think what happened, I'm guessing and surmising that Howie Roseman, as he does, he's done some good intel on the quarterback landscape. And, you know, I think Russell Wilson during last season had it floated out there that there were a certain number of teams that he would want to go to. And his agent must have floated it out there. Eagles were not one of them. So I think Howie Roseman has done his intel, and I think he has spoken to or heard from or gotten intel on Russell Wilson. And my personal opinion is I'm sure they heard that Russell would not necessarily be choosing to be traded to the Eagles. I believe he has a no trade clause or has the ability to decide where he goes. Is that right?
Yeah, he does. But let me say this. Let me jump in, John. Last year when this happened, and Deshaun Watson the same way, he had a no trade clause and said, I don't want to come to Philadelphia. But at that point last year, remember, Nick Sirianni was an unknown. You know, they didn't have a lot of weapons. All of a sudden you have Devontae Smith now. Dallas Goedert has emerged as one of the best tight ends. So things have changed a little bit. Nick Sirianni's a known commodity, did a good job, arguably the best rookie head coach. What's the harm in picking up the phone and saying, hey, we're in a better situation. The Philadelphia Eagles are better than what they looked like last year, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, if the legal entanglements get cleared up. They look like a better situation now than they did 12 months ago.
I don't disagree. And I think that's a possibility. And I believe that Howie Roseman and the Eagles are going to see if there's any upgrade at any position, and quarterback being one of them. They're closely watching the Deshaun Watson situation. And they make a call to Russell Wilson. They make a call to the Seattle Seahawks. But look, don't you think that after the season they could have said, hey, the quarterback is like any position. Yeah. We're going to try to upgrade at any position. But they got together and they decided to publicly announce that day that Jalen Hurts is our guy and he's going to be our quarterback next year, and that they told Jalen that. So I do think it would take something out of the norm or what they were expecting for that to change. That's just my personal opinion, because they didn't have to come out with that hard stance.
But as my partner likes to say, neither Howie Roseman or Nick Sirianni were under oath at the time. They can change their story if something comes up that is just significantly better. All right, John, I'm going to bed on Sunday night so I can get up here, get two birds 365. I got NBC 10 on. I got John Clark giving me my Sunday sports wrap. And I got a cut from the podcast that you did with Brian Dawkins. And he said something that just didn't ring true for me. I want to get your feeling on it. You asked him, rightfully so, about the defensive coordinator and how it worked out in his first year here in Philadelphia. And Doc said he thought he changed his philosophy in midseason. The Gannon started the year one way, but in season he became more aggressive and he took more chances. I don't know that was the case. Now, I know Brian Dawkins knows more about NFL defense than I'll ever know. So I got to give him at least the benefit of the doubt because he's Brian Dawkins, and I sure as hell am not. But I can also evaluate myself. Do you think the Eagles changed their defense midstream? We know they changed their offense. Nick Sirianni came out and said it. We had to become a running-based offense to win, and they did. I think the defense stayed pretty steady all year. I don't think there was any massive change. I just think the quarterbacks they were playing, some of the teams they were playing weren't quite as good. Did you buy that when Doc was trying to sell it, that over the course of the season, the DC changed his overall philosophy?
Well, I think that he did blitz a little more. I do think that he also started to let Darius Slay play some man coverage. I think that he changed up some of those things. I mean, at first, when they started the season, he basically was playing his safeties way back. And look, I get it. You don't want to give up the big play, but it wasn't an aggressive defense. And as Brian said, he thought it was very vanilla, which it was. So if you're having your safeties play way back, and then you start to adjust your scheme and you're playing more single high safety, I think that is an adjustment. And I think Slay was very open. He likes to play man coverage. And I don't think they were doing that early on. And I think eventually they were like, okay, this game, I think it's best if we do that. So I think he did change his defense. And yeah, I wish he was more aggressive, but let me ask you this. Did he have the personnel that allows you to have a defense like Jim Johnson had, an attacking style defense like Brian Dawkins had when he was there? And I don't know if that to be true. Rodney McLeod was coming back from knee surgery. This safety position, not exactly a big strength. You had Darius Slay in the secondary, and then you're asking linebackers and a defensive front that, let's be honest, a defensive front, they weren't exactly getting after the quarterback and getting home. Derek Barnett is the king of getting some pressure, but they weren't necessarily getting home. Fletcher Cox, I think there was a big issue with him and Jonathan Gannon, and they eventually worked through that. So your premise, I agree, they didn't go crazy becoming more aggressive. And look, I think in that playoff game against the Tampa Bay Bucks, I think it really showed that Brian Dawkins was right. Quarterbacks these days, you can't sit in a coverage for the last 6, 7, 8 seconds of the play clock, because Tom Brady, he's going to see everything and he's going to pick you apart. I did want to see more mixes of coverage and show a look with 15, 16, 18 seconds left in the play clock and mix it up as the play clock is winding down, because Tom Brady picked them apart. Now, one thing is that defensive line was not able to get any pressure until they lost the key lineman. So I agree. I think that they do need to do more. They need to get better talent. Jonathan Gannon needs to be more aggressive, but he did change some things up. He definitely did. And they were playing inferior talent, and that did help out a lot.
Well, let's talk about the draft. The combine starts this week, John, and this is going to be one of the most important drafts in Eagles history because they have 3 first-round picks. They start the process with 3 first-round picks. So no guarantee how he's going to potentially trade up, trade down, trade out. But let me ask you this. You mentioned defensively, they need to restock the cupboard, so to speak. They need more talent. I think we could all agree with that. Do you think this team, if they take those 3 first-round picks, are they disciplined enough? Because Jeffrey Lurie, you know what he likes. You've been around this team for a long time. He thinks you need an explosive offense to succeed consistently in the modern NFL. They have an offensive head coach. Would they be disciplined enough to go defense in the first round of the draft?
Yeah, I do think so. Because I think they see what they need. And on offense, I think they're really good at tight end. I think they've got a decent receiver, really good receiver with Devontae Smith. And I think you can get a receiver in free agency. And I was doing a podcast with Chris Collinsworth, and he talked about how the NFL is now, you got to have 3 receivers. Yeah. You take a look at the Bengals, and you got to have a different style. So I think you've got the speed with Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, boom, send him down the field, attract the safety help with Quez Watkins. And then I think you need a big-bodied receiver. And I think you've got a couple guys out there where you can accomplish that. Mike Williams, who used to play for Nick Sirianni with the Chargers. You've got a couple of other guys out there, Allen Robinson, that are available. So I think you can take care of getting that 3rd receiver who would become your 2nd receiver or a tandem with Devontae Smith. I think you can take care of that in free agency. And I think then you go get pass rushers. You saw in the playoffs, the Super Bowl, it always comes down to the biggest moments, guys on the defensive front or an outside linebacker spot getting to the quarterback. And they desperately need that. If Derek Barnett is gone, Fletcher Cox is getting up there once again. Go get pass rushers. And the thing I agree with Brian Dawkins about, you need a really good defensive playmaker at each level of your defense. I think they've got that with Slay. You need to get a playmaker at linebacker, but more importantly, you need more pass rushers. So I think, yes, they will be disciplined to either do 2 of 3 or all 3 on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, JC, I want to ask you about a guy who you've talked to recently for your podcast. And if he whispered sweet nothings in your ear and you want to divulge here, yeah, I know that hasn't happened, but we'll take it any way we can get it. But I'm going to ask you interpret a little bit. Jason Kelce, we expect that a decision will be made between now and the start of the year. He hasn't committed to play. He hasn't committed to not play this year. And I think it will have a big impact on what the Eagles do in both free agency and the draft. Jason Kelce coming back for 2022?
I think so. When I talked to him at the Super Bowl festivities, he said his body feels really good. Mentally, he's really good. And we talked about the things that he loved about football. And since the pandemic loosened up a little bit with the NFL this past year, he couldn't stop talking about being around the guys all the time again, whether it's in the lunchroom, all over the meeting rooms, being together. He loves that. And I think he knows he would really miss that. So I think if the body and mind are feeling good, and talking to his brother said he thinks Jason has a number of really good years left and that he absolutely loves football. He did say, a big but, that he's got two really young girls at home, young kids at home that he really loves and adores and wants to spend more time with. But I get the sense that he is leaning towards, or the family believes, that he will come back. And one Eagle that I talked to, he said, I think he's coming back. We've got unfinished business. He saw the team, the way they were able to run the ball, and you found something with this team. It's unfinished business, and he wants to come back.
And give credit to the NovaCare chefs, because Jason Kelce loves that cafeteria, John. I want to go down to the first coast of Florida with you, John Clark, because you've talked to Doug Pederson a number of times, and he ends up in Jacksonville. Boy, that's a great situation. I don't know about the organization, because the organization has been a disaster, but Doug Pederson teamed up with Trevor Lawrence. For a head coach in this league to get a talent at the quarterback position, again, you do hedge with the Jaguars because they've been the Jaguars. But, boy, that's a good spot for Doug Pederson. Do you see it the same way?
I agree with you. I did have one Eagles player who played for Doug that said he would have wanted him to go somewhere else because of that Jaguars situation. But I agree with you. I mean, it's almost like kind of starting over with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, a young quarterback. You got Trevor Lawrence. And I think Doug, look, Philly is a really tough market. And Andy Reid talked about going from Philadelphia, one of the toughest football markets, to Kansas City, where first press conference, you've got some writers who went up and shook his hand and gave him a hug. And I think Jacksonville is a tremendous landing spot for Doug. And in those conversations with Doug, he said he learned a lot from being a head coach in Philadelphia, how to deal with the media, because he didn't really have that in some of these other places. So I do think it is a great spot for Doug. The pressure obviously is not as hot in Jacksonville as it is in Philadelphia. And as you said, the young quarterback, and I think they've got money to spend, and they're going to try to go get a free agent receiver or two. So I think this is a really good spot for Doug. And when he and the Eagles split up, he's been living in Jupiter, Florida, down there in that area. And so, hey, he's staying in Florida. And I think it's a good situation. He looks so refreshed. I think that year with the pandemic and the losing and Carson and all the things that happened, I think it was just a really bad year and a really tough year personally and professionally for Doug. So I think he's completely refreshed, and I agree with you. I do think it's a good situation because of the quarterback.
All right, John, you give us a good take on what the Philly market is like. I'll give you my own experience. I went down when Reggie White came back as a member of the Green Bay Packers, and there were both boos and cheers. I was down there when Donovan McNabb first came back, and there were both boos and cheers. Will there be any boos when Doug Pederson leads his Jacksonville Jaguars out onto the field this year because the Jags are coming to Philly. Is there going to be any mixed reaction for Coach Dougie P?
I think you know the answer to that. No way. I mean, Doug Pederson brought the city of Philadelphia the greatest sports gift in the history of the city. I mean, there will never be a parade. There will never be a win like the first Super Bowl in Philadelphia, ever. It's the biggest thing ever. And Doug was a huge part of that because you lost your MVP quarterback. You lost your left tackle. And they came up with a scheme to get Nick Foles over the hump to have his greatest game ever and beat the GOAT of quarterback and GOAT of coaching. Absolutely not. Doug Pederson is a hero for life in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, are you with me? I don't think there is one single person who's booing Doug Pederson. I think most people felt, I think the majority of people felt he shouldn't have been fired.
Well, I agree, John. But then, I think about, sitting in Minneapolis that night, and I remember talking to people at my hotel bar and saying, all right, well, Doug's got a lifetime dispensation card in Philadelphia. You're right. It's never going to be matched. Turns out that was 3 years and he's out, which tells you this is a tough market. So I think more of the pressure is on Nick Sirianni. He better win that game. If Doug
No
Peterson
doubt.
comes in, I mean, if he loses that game, I don't think people are going to be happy with Nick Sirianni.
He could get booed. He could get booed the next week. I think you are dead on, Johnny Mac. I know McMullen wants to ask you a Simmons question, but I'm going to beat him to it. I'm going to ask you a Harden question. How tempted were you to get to the airport when you found it? Or was he just driving down from Brooklyn? I don't even know. First time he stepped in the city as a 76er. What was his mode of transportation when he got here, Johnny Airport?
Well, I was in L.A. for Super Bowl week, and I couldn't hop on a little plane, private plane, because I don't have that kind of access. I fly in coach and commercial, but he actually went home to Houston after the trade, and he came into Philly from Houston, and I was able to get that intel to our good people at NBC 10 and NBC Sports Philadelphia, and they got the arrival, but Daryl Morey beat us to it. The social media team of the Sixers sending out the big hug, right. Daryl finally getting his guy. So, yeah, that's a big arrival. The Beard arriving in Philly was a big arrival, and I was out in L.A., but we took care of it. You can't beat the teams these days, though. They've got their own
they deal with
production.
themselves. Yeah, they deal with themselves. Your most recent take off with John Clark, Danny Green. So the Sixers swingman talking about obviously the trade and James Harden's debut, which 2 games it's been spectacular. I mean, 2 games is 2 games, but I think people are starting to realize what it means to have a shot creator on the floor with Joel Embiid. But when you look back at the Ben Simmons era and, you look at how it started in the Sixers, and how they handled Ben Simmons, what do you think was the crux of, and I'm not talking about, giving up the dunk. I'm talking about the Sixers in player development. And the fact that they had Ben Simmons is tremendously talented. I think we could all agree, but the player development wasn't there. Where do you think that crux was? What did the Sixers fail at?
Well, first of all, they all tried to get Ben Simmons to unlock that part of his game, shooting the ball. And Brett Brown publicly tried. Elton Brand said, we spoke to him. He is going to shoot more. He's going to take more shots. It didn't happen. So then Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey come in and they said, how can we get the best out of Ben Simmons? And I think they said, we need to, I don't want to use the word coddle, but we're not going to push that whole shooting thing with him because he apparently doesn't like it. So I think they decided we are going to publicly praise him and we are going to praise him as well, build up the strengths of his game. And obviously that comes back to haunt you in the playoffs always. It happened in the series against the Raptors when Jimmy Butler had the ball instead of Ben Simmons. It came back to haunt him again. I think, my opinion, what happened was I think Ben started to see, and at the trade deadline last year, Daryl Morey comes in, and Ben sees that, hey, this team is built around Joel Embiid. And I think he saw, and once he was basically told that you're probably going to be traded for James Harden, in that trade with Houston that Brooklyn in the end beat out the Sixers and had a better offer. But I think he saw that, hey, they're willing to trade me. They wanted to get James Harden. And I think he started to feel like, well, I guess I'm not the big 1A, 1B with Joel Embiid. It's Joel's team. And I think Ben also, I think he probably saw Joel being the guy and probably wanted to be the guy. But my personal opinion is that I don't think Ben loves the game as much as Joel. And I also think Ben loves the trappings more than the game. The cars, the model girlfriends, the mansion in LA, the mansions other places, having a private plane at his disposal at any time, going overseas to London or Paris or whatever. I think he started to enjoy the trappings more than the game, jewelry, all that stuff. And for me, if you absolutely love the game, you play this past season and you say, I'm going to stick it to the Sixers. I'm going to have my best year ever. And they're going to trade me. I'm going to build up my value and they're going to trade me for something bigger and better, a better situation for him. Now, you could say he got what he wanted to the Nets, but I do think he started to feel that the Sixers were putting all of their attention on Joel and trying to get James Harden, which they did at the deadline last year. And Ben said, okay, you don't love me like you love Joel. You don't want me here as much as Joel. And I think that really got in his head. And I think the family also really puts it in his head. And yeah, I think the Doc comments, Joel's comments, all that stuff was kind of like the icing on the cake. But I think it all started with that moment last year where Ben was basically informed that he's going to be traded for James Harden. And I'm told Ben did cry about that. He had tears. So look, it's a mess, but in the end, it is all on Ben. It is all on Ben.
Yeah.
It's over and done with now. Harden's here. He's in Brooklyn. Good luck, Ben. We know we're not going to see you on the 10th. There's no way he plays in that game. Maybe we'll see you in the playoffs. All right, John, last one for me. I want to take you onto the court with nets, just no rims. Best of 3 sets. Who wins on the tennis court? John Clark or Daryl Morey? John Clark or Joel Embiid? Have you faced off against either guy? Do you want to face off against either guy? If you do, who's winning?
I do want to face off against either of them. Look, I've seen Joel's game on video, people seeing him, on a playground in South Philly or Philly. I think I could definitely beat Joel Embiid. He's just learning the game like he learned basketball 10 years ago.
A heck of a reach, though.
Yeah.
A heck of a reach.
Yeah, and the serve is starting, 15 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
So I think I could take Joel Embiid. But Daryl Morey, I think Daryl Morey is probably a very, very smart tennis player because he's an incredibly intelligent person. And I remember when I played Hurricane Schwartz in racquetball, and I was running all over the place trying to, hit the ball. Hurricane in racquetball just stood in one spot because he knew that ball from the angles was coming back to him. So I think Daryl Morey is that type of tennis player because he's got all the angles figured out in his brain. So I think Daryl Morey would be a tough matchup, but I think I pull it out in the end.
There's a podcast to itself. John Clark versus Hurricane Schwartz and John Clark versus Joel Embiid. Which doesn't belong and why. I would love to see that. Yeah. Johnny, great stuff. We appreciate you coming on board. Keep up the great work. We'll get you back on again soon enough. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
All right. Good talking with you guys. Have a good one.
Thanks,
John Clark, NBC Sports Philly, NBC 10, and his podcast taking off, one of the best in the city. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We still got 10 minutes left.
By the way, I got a John Clark wrestling story for you after the break.
Is he a wrestling? I know he's a Springsteen guy.
Yeah, he's a wrestling guy.
Oh, he's friends with my buddy Ange, who worked for events for years.
Yeah, he used to work for well, that's what the story's about. He used to work for ECW.
I should have put those two together. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald coming back. Put a wrap on Birds 3.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Coming back to wrap up a Birds 365 Tuesday episode. Combine getting underway. They're not going to do a whole hell of a lot today. Gets much more important as the week goes on. Today's kind of a get-together, everybody get to know each other type day. But fun week in the National Football League because the Combine is in place. And if Sean McVay doesn't want to show up, good for him. We enjoy your victory lap in the office this week, John McMullen. Eagles coach will be there. Eagles general manager will be there. Those who are left on the Eagles scouting staff will be there. They lost a couple guys. I haven't replaced them yet, but John and I have already talked about that. Before we put the wrap on the show, what's your Johnny Clark wrestling story?
So when I went to Monday Night Raw, January, it was sometime in January, and thanks to Chris Legenteel, got to get that in, so I get him next time. WWE Vice President of Global Communications. But
which, by the way, if they come back for SmackDown and you can bring a friend, like you were good enough to invite me this time, I just couldn't go because I was on here. I don't work Fridays, J Mac. If you get another invite, count your partner in.
So I'm taking some pictures at the show and putting them on Twitter, and all of a sudden I get the DM from John Clark, and he's backstage. Can you see that? Can you see who that is?
Yeah. No, looks like a big gray beard.
That is John Clark with Paul Heyman.
Really? Okay.
It's
a bad picture then.
At Monday Night Raw. Wow, it's there. Can you get closer? That is his mask. That's why you're seeing the beard. That's John's mask.
Okay. All right. I got it.
Yeah. Still mask. He had his mask
masked up. Gotcha.
And so he trumped me with Paul Heyman, who we used to work for in ECW. So there you have it.
By the way, ECW. Who's your favorite ECW wrestler ever?
Ooh, gonna have to go Sabu.
I had two. One, because he actually used to come out to our shows. He was a fan of Mac and Mac, and he showed up a couple times. Sandman was
yeah.
A favorite.
Great entrance. Was he drunk out at the show?
I would borderline call him a buddy. But if you're just talking about ring work, not only my favorite ECW, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time,
Rob Van Dam.
RVD.
Yeah. We got to get BLG on the show. BLG.
I was an RVD fan. Not one of the
good.
best.
I probably
favorite.
would
Loved
say, yeah, I think of Rob because he went on to be a big WWE star. But yeah, he was probably even better than Sabu. I would agree with you there.
I was an ECW fan, but yes, you just kind of validate the overall career when you also become a WWE superstar, which he was. All right, Johnny Mac, what are you going to pick up from the combine over the next couple of days?
There's a couple teams are talking today, so I don't have the schedule in front of me, but a couple of head coaches, a couple GMs are actually getting going today. So, yeah, it ramps up a little bit today, and obviously, the Eagles, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni are talking, I believe, at 1:15 and 1:30 tomorrow. So there's a lot of guys. I just found it. So. Starts with George Patton and Nathaniel Hackett today at noon. Trent Baalke's going to talk. Doug Pederson, Chris Ballard.
Dougie P today?
Yeah, 1:45 today.
Okay.
Doug Pederson, Brian Gutekunst. That'll be big because of the Aaron Rodgers situation. Matt LaFleur, Duke Tobin with his interns. He'll be talking. Zach Taylor, Ron Rivera, a lot of guys. John Robinson, Eric DeCosta, John Lynch, Martin Mayhew, Mike Vrabel. So quite a few guys today.
You mentioned Riverboat Ron. I think I asked you this and I forget, so I apologize. Do you like the Commanders as a name?
I do not. It's not terrible. The XFL team was named the DC Defenders. Now, part of it was the alliteration of DC. They're not going to. I like Defenders. I thought, they might not even be able to get the intellectual property. I know that's a big deal because when the Redskins announced they would change their name, and I can say that because that was the official name of their team.
Right.
So they'll try to get me canceled. When the team was known as the Washington Redskins and they announced they were going to change their name, there was some guy who, he went and trademarked a whole bunch of names, potential names. And it's actually a smart thing to do business-wise. Then you try to get Daniel Snyder to cough up a little bit of money for the trademark. And he didn't want to deal with that. And, I think they eliminated a lot of names that they potentially could have looked at, but I don't have a problem with it, but I don't think it's great. I don't.
I kind of like it, and I actually like their new uniform. They did enough of a change while keeping the colors pretty damn close. That organization over the last couple of years could screw up a 2-car funeral, but I actually think
they screwed up the logo. Yeah,
I think they kind of they had to admit, we kind of messed up on that, and at least
that's probably the intern who wasn't born when they won a Super Bowl.
Whoever was in charge of that. But I actually think the Commanders turned out to be a pretty good name. But yeah, you talk about trademark. How did they start? I just assumed the USFL, the new USFL Part 2 had worked.
Yeah. Now that'll be going on for a while.
Worked it out with the former league, and now the league is going, no. You can't use the title USFL. We still retain rights to that.
Yeah, I'm surprised. That was a story when they first announced it, and I think it was Steve I forget his name, but had the intellectual property of the original USFL, and he mentioned it when they announced it. And I just assumed they worked something out behind the scenes, but obviously they didn't, because they've been selling, old USFL merchandise for years and years and years, and they did have the trademarks. And yeah, I'm always amazed that Cleveland Indians in baseball, when they changed to Cleveland Guardians, they didn't know there was another team in Cleveland called the Guardians, and they didn't work that out. So yeah, you would think these large organizations would have their ducks in a row, but unsurprisingly, well, maybe not so surprisingly with the Washington football team, because as you mentioned, they do not have their ducks in a row.
That is very true. All right, partner. Good show today. Good to get John Clark and Paul Domowitch. We thank both of those guys for hopping on. Matt Verderam will join us early tomorrow, first hour before the combine interviews and stuff get underway. We'll try and scare up somebody else as well. I will talk to you in 22 hours. Good enough, partner?
Good enough. 22 hours. You didn't Chuck Woolery. I wasn't ready. Check 2 and 2.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.